It's exciting to see such a full group. So many people. There are a few more chairs up front. We're still looking for a seat. I'm here today to introduce Lisa Ford. She is a conservation program leader and wildlife biologist, currently working in the Delivery for Wildlife, the Longleaf Alliance here in South Carolina and throughout the Southeast as their conservation program director. The reason I know Lisa is that she was one of the first graduates we had from the online Masters in Wildlife and Fisheries Resources degree. It was actually still a Masters in Wildlife and Fisheries Biology at that point, and they had a project component, a requirement, and I remember working with her quite a bit during that time. And some of the people that she introduced me to, I've continued to work with on the Rock Spider Lily and lots of history I know you probably don't care about. She's got a BS in wildlife science from Auburn and a master's in education from Auburn, and then came to South Carolina, became a certified wildlife biologist in 2013. She is currently the chair of the South Carolina chapter of Wildlife Society and a former chair of Drag Fire Council here in South Carolina, and lives just outside Charleston. Yeah. Thank you for being here, Lisa.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's great to see all of you. I think the best thing you can do on a Friday morning is talk about longleaf, and I'm glad all of you think that too. So I'm really excited to see all of you. And of course, I'm always excited to talk about longleaf. You know, most of the longleaf talks are really focused on the past. So you know, most talks are really kind of all about the history of longleaf and kind of what happened and why longleaf declined. And since you all are kind of forward looking, thinking about your research and all the things that are going to happen in the world as we go forward, I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of where we've come from in the longleaf world, but I wanted to spend most of the talk kind of talking about where we're going. What are the opportunities? How are the things that are happening in kind of the forestry markets with landowners and in the world kind of shaping the opportunities for longleaf restoration and how we're going to sustain this ecosystem into the future. You know, over the last 20 years, we've just put a tremendous amount of money and energy into restoration, but we have to sustain that as we go forward. So let me talk a little bit about the Longleaf Alliance. It was kind of born out of Auburn University in 1995. Two professors, Dean Jerstead and Rhett Johnson saw the decline of longleaf across the range and decided to kind of get people together to talk about it. And they saw a need, and kind of out of that, the Longleaf Alliance was born, and then eventually it kind of branched off into its own nonprofit. The bread and butter of our work is really providing technical assistance to landowners. So we meet with them on the landscape. We help connect them with consultants. We talk with them about what their goals and objectives are. And so we're kind of scattered all across the 9-state range. We also provide a lot of financial assistance. We do some education and outreach, and we do all of that really through partnerships. And all of the information that we put out there, of course, is science-based. So we kind of work through some different kind of strategic or key priorities. One is kind of raising awareness and growing the community. We have a really bad habit of kind of preaching to the choir, talking to all the people that already love all the things that we do. And so one of our goals has really been kind of expanding that community and growing that kind of awareness and connection with the public to the environment around them. You know, they know all about the Amazon, they know about African animals, but they really need to know about how the things around them came to be and what role that played in kind of the development of the Southeast, the culture and the natural resources around them. Building that understanding of longleaf with landowners and our agency partners and academic partners, improving forest health, so doing a lot of the restoration work, conserving diverse forests, so making sure that that these forests will be here as we go forward, and then restoring ecosystems. So improving forest health by doing invasive species management, and then actually kind of establishing a new forest through restoration. So most of you probably in your classes have kind of heard this story of longleaf and kind of the decline of longleaf. And I won't spend a lot of time on it. Of course, this is the longleaf range across the southeast, from the piney woods of Texas up to southern Virginia and then down to central Florida. Longleaf occurred on what we think about 90 million at its peak. Only about 60 million of that was probably dominant in longleaf, but the range kind of covered about 90 million acres. By the mid 1990s, we only had about 2.9 million of that left. So why did longleaf decline? There was no single reason. It was kind of death by 1,000 cuts. Of course, logging, agriculture, our friends over there, invasive animal species, the steam engine, we got really good at moving wood very quickly. And so we were able to do deforestation quickly, kind of industrial forestry kind of rose in the 1900s, and then of course development. So there wasn't one single thing, it was lots of these things that happened over time. And then, ultimately we had only about 3% of the range left. Kind of the final blow was the government anti-fire campaign in the 30s, probably the most successful marketing campaign in the history of the United States up until that time. Death rides in the forest when a man is careless. Who really wants to light a fire, when you might kill people? And so across a lot of the South and definitely out West, we kind of lost that culture of fire. But we did hang on to small kernels of it, and we were eventually be able to kind of resurrect that over the last 40 years through education and providing resources to landowners. But just a huge effort. And then of course we introduced the cutest mascot ever to stop fire, which was Smokey. Yeah. I have a love-hate relationship with Smokey. Yeah, so definitely hurt longleaf. Longleaf goes through these kind of unique, a unique set of life stages, very different than all of our other kind of southern yellow pines. It's fire adapted in most stages of its life, so it has a very big seed that falls pretty close to the tree, and that seed has to connect with bare mineral soil in order to germinate. And of course, fires kind of help facilitate that, kind of clean out that forest floor. When it first germinates and starts to grow, it goes through this kind of grass stage where those long needles look a lot like native warm season grasses. They protect that growing bud of the seedling and kind of help protect it as these fires sweep through. But once it starts growing, it grows very quickly, kind of goes through this bolt to kind of get up above those flame lengths. And then as it grows into a mature tree, it has very thick bark, which helps to protect it from fire. So very fire adapted, and fire has been part of this ecosystem for a long time. So why care about longleaf forests? There's just a lot of values that kind of come with longleaf, and it's the forest type where you can get these kind of economic values out of the forest and the ecological values simultaneously. And you can't always do that, but it provides, tremendous wildlife habitat, of course, recreation opportunities, hunt leases. You can claim or get a premium value for your hunt leases if you have kind of well-maintained longleaf habitat. A lot of quail hunting happens in longleaf forests. Economics, of course, the way we manage longleaf has a lot to do with fuel reduction, kind of helping to contribute to community safety. It's this also this important connection to our past. Most of the great cities in the Southeast were built by longleaf. So Augusta, Savannah, Charleston, a lot of these old buildings were built out of longleaf wood. And it's got watershed benefits, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And of course, is a really, really beautiful place to be. But there's a lot of differences across the range. So I showed you that kind of range map. Very different plants and animals. For the most part, it's a forest with a single dominant tree species in it, longleaf pine, little to no mid-story, and this really diverse ground cover. But those plants and animals can change as you go from these drier kind of xeric sandhills habitats where you might have some species like hognose snakes, gopher tortoises, these things that are adapted to really live in these very dry places, plants that are adapted to living in dry places. And then a little bit sandier, loamier soils, rolling hills, montane longleaf. So we've got mountain longleaf in the mountainous or hilly areas of Alabama and Georgia. And then of course our flatwoods and savannas, and our savannas kind of being the most diverse. So there's a lot of change, which kind of lends itself to all the diversity, the biodiversity that we see. And all of that is influenced by the hydrology, the topography, the soils that are in those places, and then of course the past land use. It's kind of best known as this global biodiversity hotspot because we've lost so much of the habitat. You know, a lot of the species are federally listed. And most of them are designed to really benefit from this open canopy structure. It's about 60% or so of all of the wildlife species in longleaf forests live on the ground. So they forage on the ground, they live on the ground, they nest on the ground. So really it's all about the ground cover. And longleaf forests are a little bit like Midwestern prairies in that way. So the animals are insectivorous, they're burrowers, they graze. So they have a lot of those same behaviors. And then of course, there's a lot of diversity with plants as well. Over 900 species across that 9-state range. A longleaf forest require active management. So it's not like a loblolly pine forest or some other forest types where you can just kind of like set it and forget it. We really have to do burning now, thinning, and a lot of times some kind of mid-story hardwood control. So that could be mulching or herbicide. And for landowners that manage longleaf, it's a pretty big commitment to manage and to grow a longleaf pine. But the reward is high, but they have to be actively engaged. And what we don't want to see, and we sometimes see, is kind of this unmanaged forest situation where you may have a high basal area, kind of even age management, where you're just kind of thinning it at certain intervals and then clear cutting it and starting over. And it tends to have kind of low ground cover diversity and wildlife value. I mean, this is obviously what we love to see. This uneven age management, and over time, the values in longleaf forests kind of accrue over time. So the older these forests get, the more we manage them, the longer the fire frequency or fire regime is over time. The more value we kind of get out of that forest. It's a really resilient tree, and this is becoming kind of increasingly important, I would say, as we are kind of facing a more challenging future ahead. It's pretty well insect and disease resistant. So the most disease resistant southern yellow pine we have, and particularly resistant to southern pine beetle, which is the #1 pine pest we have here in the beetle pest we have here in the southeast because of the way we manage longleaf, wildfire resistant, windstorm resistant. So there's been a lot of studies after Hurricane Hugo and Katrina, Michael, Laura, some of the big storms that have hit the southeast that showed that longleaf is more resistant. One, because of the taproot, but also because of the canopy. It's a lot lighter. more sparse. And so it's likely that, the wind is kind of passing through those trees. And then it's also drought resistant. And so as a tree, it uses less water. It can shut down in times of drought. So it's really efficient when it comes to water use, kind of at both the tree level and at the stand level. And so for landowners, as they start to kind of look ahead into the future at their potential risks, more frequent windstorms that we're having, these kind of weird, like wet, dry cycles that we're having every year, longleaf becomes a really attractive option for them. One of the things that we're really focused on as an organization is making sure that longleaf products that landowners get a premium value for those products. So some trees are grown for pulp and some trees are grown for other reasons, and we probably shouldn't mix those two things up. If a landowner is going to invest in prescribed fire, if they're going to do all of the management that is required when you have longleaf forests because they want the wildlife benefits, we want them to get a premium value for those products at the end of the day. So we want poles. They could get income every couple of years from something like selling pine straw, and mass timber. I mean, you've got a mass timber building going in here on campus. So we've worked with landowners to kind of position them for these future markets where they can get more value out of their wood. So there's a lot of different markets that landowners can participate in, and that kind of influences how they might manage their land. One of the most interesting markets I think that's developing is the mass timber market. So have you all heard about the mass timber market, or have you studied mass timber a little bit? So these are buildings made out of wood. And Clemson is building the new building that out of mass timber. You probably have gone by it quite a bit. So that building, the wood from that building comes from a property called Brosnan Forest. And this is a landowner that we've had probably a decade or more relationship with, and have been working with them on managing their longleaf. And so they provided that longleaf to Clemson, and it's one of the very first examples of an almost all longleaf mass timber building in the world. So it's pretty neat to have it here at Clemson. We now have this example of what a mass timber building looks like. We're sequestering carbon in the building. It has a lower carbon footprint. When these trees were in the forest, they were being managed well. That forest is home to red-cockaded woodpeckers. So what a cool story that you're standing in a building that has been sustainably managed and is providing habitat for, you know, all of these species. And I think that's really the way of the future. So mass timber is kind of exploding all over the US, but it's neat to have an example here on campus. So now I'm going to kind of talk about the future of longleaf. So, and this may be where some of your work ties in, maybe some of your research projects, or if you're kind of thinking about how it might tie into what's happening on the landscape. So I'm going to talk a little bit about sustaining longleaf restoration. We have an 8 million acre goal. So that's kind of the goal for longleaf. So right now we're sitting at about 5.2 million acres. So at its lowest, it was 2.9. We've done a lot of restoration over the last 30 or 40 years. But we'd like to get to around 8 million acres. And then I'll talk about some kind of emerging opportunities. There's an initiative called America's Longleaf Restoration Initiative. And this is kind of an umbrella group that works with everybody. So federal agencies you might work for, state agencies you might work for, and a lot of conservation organizations like ours, that we all work under this America's Longleaf umbrella. And America's Longleaf has a strategic plan that kind of guides the work that the partners do across the landscape to restore longleaf. So there's 18 what we call local implementation teams in these areas that are significant for longleaf or have a lot of longleaf. So a lot of them are anchored by military installations or public lands. So partners come together in these kind of focal landscapes to do longleaf restoration, species recovery work, all of that kind of stuff, all kind of hoping to meet that 8 million acre goal. The American Longleaf just did a new strategic plan for longleaf pine, which kind of incorporated kind of some of the modern threats we're facing, and also kind of a community aspect to it. Really kind of taking into account like how connected people and communities are into the kind of the whole effort to restore longleaf. So as a longleaf alliance, like as our organization, some of the things that we're doing to sustain longleaf into the future, I mentioned we do a lot of education and outreach. Our biennial conference is in Williamsburg, Virginia in October of 2026. It's the largest longleaf conference in the country. We usually have around 400 or 500 people attend. We do have registration waivers for students, so you can apply for that scholarship, and we'll open that up next spring. In September, we open up a fellowship for anyone that's studying longleaf. You can apply. We'll put that on our website and social media. It's a $20,000 fellowship, so that's helpful. I think in research, and we've had 2 Owen Fellows so far. So I think one was from UGA. I think maybe both of them were from UGA. So come on, Clemson, like apply. So we'd love to have more applications for that. I mentioned we provide technical and financial assistance. A lot of landowners are new landowners. We're going kind of through the biggest generational transfer of land ever. As baby boomers are getting older, they're dying and they're handing their land off to their children who've never been involved with managing their property, their parents' property, or their family property. Or maybe they live in New York and their parent has died and they have inherited that land. We're seeing a lot more women landowners because their husbands are dying before them. And so now they've inherited this responsibility of managing their land. So there's just this incredible need for technical assistance and helping them kind of facilitate this world of cost share and like, how do I choose a consulting forester and what's a good price for my wood and how do I do all these things that we want to do. So we have a planting fund, so we help landowners by paying for their seedlings, and those kind of incentives, cost share and other types of incentives really kind of help make longleaf feasible, and it helps kind of sway their choice when they're trying to kind of figure out what to put on their property. We have ecosystem support teams. This is kind of one of the largest areas of the Longleaf Alliance. We've got 2 teams of 5 or 6 people. We hire a lot of like recent graduates to work on these teams. Part of that work is Flatwoods salamander head starting, but we also do a lot of wetland restoration, invasive species control, Kogon grass spraying, all of that kind of stuff. So we have a lot of people actually working in the field, but then we also work through a lot of partnerships. So this is primarily what I work on is our species recovery projects. So we partner with the UGA Savannah River Ecology Lab to do gopher frog and gopher tortoise head starting, and we work with our research partners so that not only are we doing the recovery work, but we can learn a little bit about it and publish that work. We also work with our national forest to do red-truncated woodpecker translocations in 3 or 4 different areas across the Southeast. So I kind of want to end this talk by talking about kind of these emerging opportunities for longleaf. You know, the world is changing and is changing rapidly. We have all these new technologies that we didn't have before. You know, when I graduated from college, initially like GIS was kind of just coming on the scene. But now we have remote sensing, we have LiDAR, we have just so many different really neat tools that can help with restoration. You know, a lot that we've learned about longleaf. You know, we've learned how to put the tree in the ground. We've learned about how to manage longleaf and be successful. So then what do we need to do to kind of keep this going and be successful into the future? And we're really kind of thinking about the intersection of these three things. One, making resilient forests. So, you know, with all of the threats from development, threats from, you know, everything that we're facing today, how do we ensure that these forests are resilient and they maintain all of the biodiversity and the values that we want to see in the forest? So it's not just a tree, but it has the diversity of plant species, has the diversity of wildlife species, community benefits. So where is longleaf, how can longleaf help support rural economies and communities? And then how can it be used for mitigation? So impacts that have happened or are happening across the Southeast, where can longleaf kind of be a tool for that? One of the very most important things is kind of increasing the quality and the quantity of longleaf seed for future restoration. So we just started working with North Carolina State University on longleaf tree improvement. If you think about it, longleaf went from 90 million acres down to 3 million acres. So we're choosing from a very limited selection of trees. So we're restoring an entire ecosystem with just with not as much genetic variety as we would like to see to really kind of sustain these trees. We're planting trees that we don't know where they came from. I was at the Kisatchie National Forest in Louisiana, big trees, big, you know, what somebody might say are old growth trees. I said, these trees are so beautiful. I said to the forester, like, this must be old growth. It's like, oh no, these trees came from Florida about 85 years ago. So these trees have been moved kind of all over the landscape. You know, when industrial forestry took off in the 80s, and we started making improved loblolly trees that grew quicker, longleaf kind of fell behind because it's a slow starter. And so, you know, loblolly and slash, now we're on these fourth and fifth generation improved trees. And so we really want to kind of figure out what does an improved longleaf look like? Are we making a tree that's maybe fusiform resistant? Do we want a tree with longer needles that maybe the pine straw trade might want? So when we're talking about it, or maybe we want tall straight trees that are good for mass timber and red truncated woodpeckers. So what kind of trees do we want to see in the future? Oh, and let me mention too, you know, if you're managing in a way that's uneven age management, so you're never totally clear cutting this forest and you're going in periodically pulling out poles and pulling out trees, that's the source of the forest genetics for the rest of time, you know, until you clear cut that forest or you plant new seedlings from somewhere else. So we want to make sure that the genetics are there, are what, you know, we want to see and will sustain this forest. So the other really important challenge, I think, an opportunity is seed quantity. Longleaf is a really sporadic seeder. So loblolly is very reliable. It's every year, it's just pumping out seed, and longleaf isn't like that. We don't know completely why, but we think it has to do with disturbances. So now that kind of Hurricane Helene went through, we are now kind of expecting there to be a good cone crop when there hasn't been one in several years. So this is the longleaf cone production in the southern region since 1966. And you can kind of see it went up to 70 cones per tree, down to 10, 70, and then it kind of bounced around. We had a really good year in 1996. I don't know what happened that year, but you can kind of see how sporadic it is. And now longleaf's the #2 tree in demand. We grow about 100 million seedlings per year, but it started to drop off because the seed isn't there to grow the seedlings for restoration. So that's a huge challenge. We've grown the demand with landowners. We're doing the good work. We're doing the education and outreach. We're providing incentives through cost share. But if we don't have the seedlings, then we're in trouble. So we want to help work with our federal partners and our agency partners and some private entities also to just get seed orchards that more efficiently and regularly produce seed. So right now, most of the seed comes from about 600 acres across the Southeast in seed orchards. You can imagine if we had a hurricane that went through, and it happened with Helene, that wiped out about 20% of those orchards. So, you know, I mean, this whole restoration effort could be kind of hanging by a thread. So we need to make sure that the resources that we depend on are there. We've also have a lot of new kind of data tools, and I think this is a huge opportunity for longleaf too, to kind of develop new tools, develop data. We're being asked more specific information about the impact of the restoration work. So the first 20 to 30 years of longleaf restoration was really just about how do we do it? How do we restore this ecosystem? Like, how do we recover these species? And now it's what's the impact of the work that you're doing? Are you really making a difference? And so the different data tools that are out there, I think, that are being developed are really key. So we put contractors in the field and they went out and looked at every single stand of longleaf across the Southeast. It's called the Longleaf Ecosystem Occurrence Database. It's available for you to use. So if you are wondering or need as part of your projects, where's the longleaf located across the Southeast, we now have that information. And we also have stand condition information. Is it mature? Is it not? Has it just been planted? And that helped feed into this longleaf sustainability analysis. So now we've started to look at not only where longleaf is, but where is it sustainable? So where is it suitable to plant longleaf for these priority areas for conservation and management, or priority areas for restoration? So where can we plant longleaf? And then where is it sustainable? And then where are these areas that we really should focus on conserving and managing longleaf with the limited resources that are out there. But this also can kind of help feed into species recovery projects. I know the Jones Center and a lot of other groups are using this. Again, it's available for download. You just have to sign a data use agreement. So I just wanted you to know that resource was out there. The last thing I wanted to talk about is kind of this opportunity around emerging ecosystem service markets for longleaf. So have you all kind of heard about the carbon market a little bit? So the landowners are essentially being paid to grow trees to sequester carbon. And so I think there's an opportunity for longleaf. There's a little bit of a mismatch there. Because we don't want to grow so many trees that we're not getting the open stand conditions that these wildlife species prefer. So with anything, it's it's a trade-off. But where we kind of see the opportunity for longleaf is really with water markets and biodiversity markets. And so with water, corporations that either use water and so depend on the water, they use it as part of their manufacturing process. or a lot of the data centers. Now Google and Meta, they're all putting data centers up for AI that required water. And so there's opportunities for landowners to get paid to restore their forests in a better condition than it would be in otherwise, to kind of offset or mitigate some of the impacts that are happening. And then the last one is biodiversity. So there's now kind of a growing biodiversity credit market where landowners could be paid to do restoration. And as a result of that uplift that you get, biological uplift that you get from the restoration, they can be paid, they can sell credits to companies to do that. And so there's lots of different kind of schemes or ways. Some of them are actually a credit where a company buys a credit, and that credit is a unit that represents something that's happened on the landscape. Or it could just be like a payment for ecosystem services where someone is paying you, and it could be a government program, a funder or corporation is paying a landowner to do restoration. And there's a lot of different reasons why they do that, again, because they're depending on that resource. Or they could have certain corporate sustainability goals that they want to meet. So I think there's some opportunities for landowners to kind of use all of these different funding sources out there to be able to manage in a way that's more conservation friendly. So most landowners can't afford to manage in a way that's conservation friendly. So if we can get them income through timber, through premium value timber, through programs like these, water, biodiversity, through pine straw, or whatever kind of fits with their overall goals and objectives, it gives them choices. It allows them to make those choices about their land, which ultimately benefits all of us, benefits the species we all love and we want to see out there, benefits our communities, and keeps, of course, water clean and abundant, and keeps air clean. We just launched this longleaf biodiversity impact fund as kind of a way to kind of give corporations a way to contribute to longleaf restoration. So we pulled together a bunch of research and created these kind of metrics for kind of the ideal structure and composition and function of a longleaf forest. And landowners will do restoration, and the closer they get to that kind of ideal, they get paid for doing that restoration work. So we're quantifying that, and we'll see how that works, if that's a way to kind of match up the sustainability needs and of these corporations, and private investment, and increase private investment for kind of this on the ground conservation impact. Just to kind of wrap up here, we have a free monthly e-newsletter, so you can sign up on our website. We put a lot of job postings on there, research articles, different outreach events that are happening around the range. So it's a great way to kind of keep up with longleaf. We also have a longleaf magazine, and I put some copies back there. If you're interested and kind of want to know more about what's happening with longleaf restoration, if you want to contribute an article about your project, we have a technology corner, a research article section, and then we just take, other types of articles. So, we're always happy to kind of accept those for our magazine. And then we've got an awesome editor who will kind of work with you to get it right for our readers. So, feel free to take advantage of that opportunity. Here's my information, email, phone number. If you've got longleaf questions, feel free to shoot me an email If you're looking for data sources, we maintain a huge longleaf library of all the longleaf research articles that we've managed to get our hands on. So we try to be a good resource in that way, or if you want to participate or know more about some of our other events or jobs, feel free to reach out to me. That's it. Any questions?
There has been this bottlenecking of diversity, right? So I just have a question, like, has there been any study done to see what are the impacts on actual ecosystem services or, wildlife in general of restoring this limited set of species compared to earlier what there was? So.
No, there hasn't. And so that's a huge potential area of research. And I think that could also help provide input into what selections should be made for tree improvement. Do we really want all tall, straight trees? Or maybe some of that forking and diversity and branching is good for certain wildlife species. So I think that's a huge opportunity. Absolutely.
Before this session, I was in a class about the forest certification. So based on this restoration effort, ecological importance, how is the certifications different than other species? Let's say loblolly, how is
Yeah.
it different?
Well, most of the big forestry companies that want to participate in the market, like sell their products, are certified in some way, so FSC or SFI. They all have certain standards, like regardless of species, that they have to follow, like clean water standards, and I feel like every year they're kind of changing and adapting some of those certification standards, so.
Every 10 years.
Every 10 years, it feels like every year. But they've added on water, most recently. Now SFI is looking at biodiversity, the FSC is looking at biodiversity, and they're developing their own biodiversity metrics. So how do we measure the biodiversity value in the forest? So like between species, is that what you're kind of asking? I don't know that there really is much of a difference like between species. There's kind of these like holistic forest management practices that they try to, and the same with like tree farm for American Tree Farm System for smaller landowners. It's really kind of like bigger picture best management practices for landowners, whether they're managing loblolly or longleaf.
Just to add to Lisa's point, it's very impossible to give you a species-wise prescription for certification. Otherwise, nothing will happen and cost will go through the roof. Basically, certification is a guideline at 30,000 level, and then indicators come in and then auditors come in. How to interpret those guidelines to get things done in terms of sustainability.
Yeah.
I have one question. For the carbon market, what they are mainly focusing on, like the improved forest management or reforestation, afforestation? Like what kind of project they are?
Yeah, a lot of both. So some of it's timber stand improvements, afforestation, and reforestation. So all of those things, there's like avoided conversion or avoided loss in the carbon market too. Although there's a lot of question about like additionality there, and is that really benefiting anybody? So I would say that's kind of a little bit more controversial. But all of those things are opportunities for landowners. When the carbon market started, it was very big, like you had to have 5,000 acres plus. And now different developers have entered the market, and they've got shorter terms for landowners. And I'm talking about the voluntary market. So there's a compliance market, and then there's a voluntary market. So in the voluntary market, there's now shorter terms, like 40-year terms, and smaller landowners can participate in those. So
And I have another question, like for the water market, like how they are determining the baseline for the water market?
So most of it's about replenishment. So it's by thinning and doing prescribed fire. Your prescribed fire, you're reducing the mid-story. And so that forest is uptaking or using less water, so And then, of course, with thinning, less trees, using water. So, so it's really about calculating replenishment. And beyond that, I would have to talk to our, partners that we're working with on that. But yeah, that's really
Okay.
what most people are interested in. There's some water quality, kind of markets. So these water markets where carbon is more kind of holistic, water markets are very localized for the most part. There are municipalities that are, or users of the water. We have one here in South Carolina. It's called the Savannah River Clean Water Fund, where the 5 municipalities that, or water entities that use the water, they would pay to help protect land. And so with the corporations. So some of these water markets have survived, some of them have failed. But now I think corporations are paying kind of for direct intervention and restoration in those watersheds. But it's almost always replenishment and not necessarily water quality right now. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I have a question. In this longleaf forest, when we check the type of leaves, I mean, we touch the leaf and we check this leaf, do we determine is it another method, for example, to determine the type, the type of the tree in this forest, or the age is how long does this tree live? So my question is that when we check this the leaf, do we can also, it's a method to determine the age of the tree?
Not that I'm aware of, not through the leaves. They're shedding their needles.
Or through the pines or the
Through the-
the oak, or the tree branch,
through the tree branch.
yeah.
Well, they're growing those branches and those branches are dropping off all the time. So you would have to actually core the tree, and maybe there's a forester who's got a better answer than that. But yeah, you actually have to core the tree to find out the actual age. Yeah, and count the rings and find out the age of the tree. So they're dropping branches. Here in the southeast, we have so many storms. They're always they're always changing, growing needles, dropping their needles, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and also can we, for example, can we also protect these trees by nourishing these trees and watering these trees? So for example, we want to prevent the forest fires in these longleaf forests because they're also important for oxygen. So can we nourish them to prevent them and also determine the environmental factors that stop these forest fires in these types of forests?
Yeah. The best way to stop forest fires is to burn. So reducing the fuel load. And if we reduce the fuel load, when a fire does go through, there's not enough fuel for it to consume. So I don't know that it would be kind of scalable or practical to kind of water anything. We see a lot of issues with fertilization with longleaf. We see forking, we see other kinds of issues. There's a reason why they grow slowly. There's benefits to the tree to grow slowly. Everything about longleaf is about hedging its bets for a tougher future ahead. When it first starts to germinate, like it's, that first year it's putting down a taproot, it's 12B, it's got this thick bark to prevent, damage from fire. Everything's about kind of being more resilient, to the world around them.
And also, can we create habitats or shelters for the animals living in this longleaf forest so we can protect these animals? Can we create shelters? For example, the deer who are living there, can we protect them from another aggressive animals such as coyotes or squirrels? We can protect them against the coyotes. So can we create habitats for these species?
Well, the best way to protect any kind of species is to manage well. So we just do good management. Then when trees are supposed to be thinned, try burning, so do good management. And that's the most beneficial. So we try not to manage any species kind of on an individual level. And of course, many of you have taken population courses, but we're really creating the best habitat for the whole population so that they can bring babies and, go off and perpetuate into the future. We do use interventions like cavities. for red cockaded woodpeckers. So we put in inserts so they get a new fresh apartment to live in, and they seem to like that. They do well. We also Head Start our gopher tortoises, and we'll dig burrows for those when we release those. So there's lots of those kind of interventions that are helpful.
So Lisa, I have two questions. First one is, I know a lot of longleaf is supported by an RCS equip program. What is the status of longleaf planting on CRP lands, Conservation Reserve Program?
Like, do people use it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people use all of these farm bill programs, so CRP, EQIP, CSP. I think CRP, not quite as much for longleaf because they like the other management practices that go with the CSP and EQIP programs. So the Farm Bill has a variety of kind of incentive programs for landowners. So one program called EQIP will actually pay landowners for practices. So prescribed buyer, they'll do like native warm season grasses. And then there's a program called CSP, the Conservation Stewardship Program, and they pay landowners like an annual payment, like an incentive payment. And then CRP also has some different kind of payment structures. So landowners take advantage of a lot of those programs that can help offset that expensive establishment cost for longleaf. But those programs are also somewhat uncertain. You know, they can kind of ebb and flow depending on what's happening. And so we've had a lot of cost share or incentives available for landowners for a long time. We don't know that they'll always be there at the level we need them to be. So that's why we're kind of looking at those private investment opportunities to kind of help subsidize or help supplement, I should say, the kind of the government subsidies for restoration. Yeah, another question.
Yeah, so second question is, as we all know, pine straw markets are going very strong. They're
Yeah.
like a couple of $1,000 to millions of dollars in just a matter of 10 years or less, actually. So do you see any changes when it comes to longleaf management with respect to rise of pine straw market in South?
Yeah, I mean, I think couple things I think are happening. I think some landowners are able to plant longleaf that weren't before because of pine straw. So you know, they're able to get kind of a periodic income. You know, it can be annual. We try to say every 3 years, where they let 1 year rest, they burn 1 year, and then they break pine straw 1 year, so that you're not. It's pretty intense where you're always raking the ground. You're impacting maybe the tree's feeder roots, the nutrients that are going into that tree. So a lot of times the trees don't do as well. And then of course you're removing that ground cover. So you're going through an herbiciding so that you can have this clean, nice pine straw when it gets collected. But for a lot of landowners, that's the only way that they can pay their taxes and, you know, maintain their trees. So we're still kind of seeing shifts in the market regionally, depending on where you are. Like some markets are growing, others are kind of shrinking, depending on what contractors are available to rake that pine straw. So, but it allows landowners to plant longleaf that maybe otherwise, you know, wouldn't. We try to really discourage landowners that have great ground cover to you know, to do pine straw. We don't want to, you know, get rid of great habitat in order to rake pine straw. So the best places to rake pine straw are like old ag fields, you know, things like that, where you just, there's nothing growing there, you know, kind of in the first place, so.
So it was old active, it will be mostly CRP.
Great, well, thank you, Lisa, again.
Feel free to grab, you know, magazine.
Like stuff on it, straight up. Yeah.
And then I was like, yeah, like, do you fan? Oh, it's really even though it has been. Yes. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I felt like there was a good. Yeah.
Last one. I got a Wednesday morning. I'm sleeping.
Some kind of. Yeah, I feel like you just gotta have you just have to like say your piece on the camera. It's a little different than like, you know, person It's so busy. I feel very pissed. That's my but I haven't had it all.
What's like?
Nice to have like comprehensive exam on the same. What do you think? Yes. I'm waiting for that. Yes.
Yeah.